Hello, everyone, and welcome to Popcorner episode 20. I think I got it wrong the last time. When we did the last episode, I was like, it's episode 18, it's episode 18. And it was actually episode 19.
I'm not good at math. I don't even know what's past the number 4, so...
Well, we're also not good with math today because we went from Indiana Jones 2 to Indiana Jones 4. The reason being that we missed a week, and originally we were going to watch 2 and then do episode 3 and 4 together. But I got lazy, and that just didn't happen. And quite frankly, it's the one that I have the least nostalgia for, so 3 got cut. I know a lot of people like that one. I couldn't tell you a lick a thing about it. But my name is Coleman. This
Raven
is my
here.
dear friend Raven. How are you doing today, my friend?
I'm doing all right, you know.
All right?
I watched this here movie with you because this is the franchise you wanted to do.
Yep, we're almost done.
And I can say it has definitely been a lot better than I thought it was going to be.
The whole franchise?
The franchise as a whole. I thought I would have a tedious time with every single one of these films.
Are you coming around? Enough to be
to be like, I understand why there's fans of this film.
Okay.
And I understand, and I see where there are good moments.
Okay.
We're here.
Interestingly enough, I think there's a couple talking points with the idea that there's a new movie coming out that I think that makes this movie really interesting.
Yeah.
So we'll get into that.
Especially since I feel like this one ends, at least compared to the first two, ends kind of like...
It should have been the end.
It should have been the end, right? Like, it feels like this was the movie that was supposed to be the last movie. Like, obviously they had the original trilogy here, and we didn't watch the third one.
Right.
But the original trilogy was made, and then this one was like, you said what, how many years later?
So I don't remember exactly when Last Crusade came out, but this movie is at least 15 years after.
Yeah, I feel like they came back for one last ride. Like,
Yes.
hey, let's wrap this up. Let's do one more film. Let's get our characters that we actually care about. Because, again, they bring back some characters, or
Right.
at least a character,
Right.
from an original film. So I feel like they brought back the characters they wanted to, like, wrap up the story with, and then they
Yes.
did it.
And one thing I wanted to say before we get into our whole Indiana Jones discussion,
Okay.
I wanted to ask you this.
All right,
Because
let's hear
I
it.
do
Lay it
wanna
on me.
This is just personal thing because I want to kind of make this podcast. I want to turn it into something that's a little more, you come for both the personality and for the movie, So if you came and you clicked on this, you wanted to know our review of what everyone thinks is obviously the best Indiana Jones film, you'll have to wait just a minute. I'm sorry, but what I wanted to ask you, I'm taking my glasses off. I can't stand the glare most of the time.
Let's hear it.
You're there with me. We're going raw.
I'm putting it back on after this question.
Naturally, I just wanted to, how is life going for you? Like, anything? I know I asked you how are you doing today, but like, really, like, what's new? You working on anything? You have any aspirations? Looking forward to anything?
You know
Games,
me.
movies?
I'm
Are you
just-
listening to the Linkin Park, like,
You know I am.
unreleased music that they're putting out here lately?
Always,
anything,
every
man,
day.
anything.
Nah, me, I'm just that gamer, man. I'm just chilling, vibing, playing video games all the time while sadly crying when I have to work. So, on top of crying with work and playing video games, there's not really much going on with me.
Okay.
I don't know. I mean, there's not really a whole lot of releases I'm super excited for because most of the stuff came out in the beginning of the year, like your
Yeah.
Dead Space and Resident Evil 4 remakes, those type of things.
Oh, absolutely.
But I'm sure there'll be some surprises in movie forms and video game forms for me. The game we just tried out just earlier, that finals
The
game,
finals.
that game's looking real good.
That's gonna be nice.
But, what about you?
Me, okay, so right now is anyone who is a PC gamer, Steam is doing their Next Fest right now, which is basically where there's a bunch of game demos.
Oh, okay.
It's like a demo jam. So like there's games that like I've been looking forward to. I've had them on my wish list for a while. I'm looking on there. They've got demos. They've never been able to be played before. They got demos.
That's cool.
There's games that I've never heard of that look cool.
Honestly,
There was a game on there that I can't remember the name of it right now, and I haven't played it yet, so I'm not going to endorse it. But I downloaded it. It was basically old school Resident Evil.
you told me
Camera
about that game.
Tank controls. Well, this is another one. This is one I'd never heard of.
Oh.
There's another one I have.
Like I said, you told me about the one that was like Resident Evil.
There's
yeah.
one yes, but this is another one that I'm like, oh my gosh. So I'm living good. Horror people. Steam Next Fest is where it at if you're trying to find something new.
All I'm saying is that I feel like demos are kind of making a return anyway.
I love
like
it.
that Liza P game or whatever. It's
I
got
have
a
it
pretty.
downloaded.
My cousins were playing it. It's got a pretty decent long demo, and it looks fun.
Is it long?
Especially
I
for
heard it
like
was the
Dark Souls
first.
fans. I'm sure a lot of people will enjoy it. But
I saw where people are already modding the demo to have the Bloodborne character models in it.
of course they
so
are.
they could put Bloodborne on PC.
Yep, there it is.
Yeah, so really cool with that. But otherwise, I'm just trying to think of what videos I want to put out. I finished Amnesia. Took me like basically 5 hours
The
flat.
bunker one?
Yeah, the bunker. I think it's, of all the frictional games, the Amnesia series, Soma, Penumbra, nobody knew what I just said there. Those were just gibberish words. This was my favorite of their games.
The bunker one.
As a whole package. Horror, gameplay loop, story, that's the only thing I'll say. Soma had the better story and world building. That was the underwater one.
Yeah.
That one, such a cool sci-fi thing. But this one, no, dude, this is probably one of my favorite horror games.
All right.
Yeah.
I mean, I played the tutorial.
The tutorial is probably the worst as far as presentation goes.
Yeah, the tutorial was just okay.
It was just fine. But then you get into the actual meat of the game, and that's where you're like, oh shit, because it's randomly generated.
Is it?
Well, in the sense of like, if you do a new playthrough,
Yeah.
hell, if you do the new playthrough, you can skip the whole opening with the trenches in the tutorial because it doesn't matter. That's just to teach you the game, which, whatever, it was kind of cool of a setup. But you go in, obviously the map layout's the same. Like, the bunker is the same, like hallways, tunnels, whatever. But
Items
there's
being...
like tripwires on the ground. They're in different places. There's like items, like you would have found a bandage here. Maybe you're going to find a different item. Maybe you won't find anything at all.
Are key items in different spots too?
Key items, I'm not so sure about. It doesn't seem like that would be. It seems very specific to, because it's for progression sake. I think that is the structure that still needs to be followed. But I think the smaller items, like the grenades, the ammunition, the healing. So, I'm really having a good time with that. Just recorded my review. Check that out. Probably either is already out by the time this comes out or it's out soon after. So anyway, Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull.
That is a movie that we just watched. And before we get on that... Oh, yeah. Dang.
You like that, you little bitch? How far in? Yeah, we're 7 minutes and we're okay. We're fine.
So yeah, we watched Indiana Jones. That's a movie we watched. In case you were wondering or were curious, because we went on a tangent here for a little bit.
If we're just catching the week before jitters of Indiana Jones fans, and this is the only of the podcasts you're seeing, we watched Indy 1 and Indy 2 previously, and I gotta say, it was eye-opening. Some of the issues of those films, all things considered, but I think the biggest interesting point has been watching Draven either like or dislike aspects of movies that I have a lot of nostalgia for.
Yeah, if this is like your first time watching, I'm just a straight horror fan. So like all I ever watch is horror genre movies. That's my whole shtick. I dabble in comedies, which is why I kind of liked the second Indiana Jones, because it got goofy. But
how'd you think about the comedy with this one?
It was all right. I definitely wasn't as much as 2.
No.
It was definitely dialed back, but I think there was a lot more here than the first movie.
But I thought this one was... I thought where Indy 2 was like more physical.
Yes,
stuff.
This one was more...
This was more like situational, like, you're going to go to school because I'm your dad. Like, I'm sorry. There's people that hate this movie. There's people that hate aspects of this movie. I think one of the biggest issues that people have is the refrigerator scene. Actually.
Nuketown?
Yeah, well, I thought...
Call of Duty?
I'm going to say it. I grew up, and this was the Indy that I saw in theaters. Straight up. This was the only... Obviously, I didn't go back to the 80s. I mean, you know what I mean?
You never know.
So I didn't see those in theaters. But
you look old enough. Keep going.
What do you mean by that, kid? Anyway, as I was saying before you so rudely interrupted me, this movie, I distinctly remember seeing it in theaters. Mm-hmm. It was, of all the movies I'd seen, this was probably like my 4th or 5th movie ever seeing in theaters.
Nice.
I'm just like, I love it. It's not my favorite movie of all time. It's not even, I can pick apart this movie too, and I think I'm going to today, because this is probably the one that we've been able to pay attention to the most.
Yeah.
Because regrettably we had some distractions the last couple of weeks, but I think we were able to sit down and watch this one pretty well, and honestly, I think it holds up better than a lot of people give it credit for.
I mean, I don't know what the general basis of this movie is for the fan base, but I mean, I dug it.
I'll be quite frank. I don't entirely know either. Like, there's probably going to be people in here thinking, "Why the hell did you even say that movie was okay?" For all I know, because I didn't grow up with the internet.
It's definitely. I
You
mean,
know what
I don't know how 3 is, but it definitely is an interesting turn from like normal things to aliens, right? So like I could see like the end product with the alien kind of being a little.
I don't like that.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like I
But-
could see the fan base not liking the whole
But I don't-
alien-esque vibe they went with at the end there with the treasures and stuff.
But at the same time, I can't place why I don't like it. And I think ultimately it comes down to the fact that all three of the other, I don't want to say treasures, but conflicts revolved around religion. This one, yes, it was belief in the sense of belief that there's more out there or something, right?
Yeah.
And like there is more of an understanding of like this was an ancient civilization rather than a alien civilization to some degree. And they try to drive that home to some degree, you know, like, oh, they were, you know, thousands of years ago, they were the collectors. They had the museum or whatever. I think ultimately, I just don't think I like the alien thing. I think I like the idea that this whole conflict springs up with the Roswell incident, you know, with like Area 51, the alien thing. Like, that was cool. I thought that was cool.
Yeah.
Because that's what, you know, at the end of the first movie, I think it's alluded to that it's Area 51, where they're putting the Ark of the Covenant away. But in this movie, we get that
Has a
kind
little
of
4-second
confirmation.
Easter egg.
Yeah, I just and just playing the music like the yeah.
Indiana should have just opened it and just
Kill
all the
everybody,
Russians
yeah.
would have died.
It only gets Nazis.
Oh, it only
you
gets Nazis.
imagine-
Okay, I didn't know that was a plot point.
I mean, honestly, it kind of is a Hebrew artifact in a way. It probably was just protecting them from Nazis.
There we go.
Yeah,
The more you know, I guess.
but
Now, I think this movie, though, to get more into the movie itself,
Yes.
I think that this movie definitely has the best, at least the better version of side characters. Bringing the original girl character back was a move.
Marion, yes.
Definitely good, even though she wasn't as strong in this one as she was the first one. I do think that
She didn't have as much
Yeah.
screen time whatsoever.
that's what I'm saying.
Or, well, I don't know I don't know about actual screen time.
I
but
just
she
think-
wasn't relevant for the majority of the movie.
I just think the first movie she had more relevance, and I think she said a lot more, did a lot more, and I remember a lot more than I do this movie already.
Right.
But I do think that her coming back, and she was still good. It's just, again, relevance, and I guess the amount of witty stuff she said wasn't the same.
Right.
And
I thought her as a character, to add into what you're saying before you continue, I'm
Yeah.
not trying to just
Yeah,
solely
you're good.
interrupt. I think I agree, lesser character. I just don't think she had much to do other than be the plot point that connected Mutt. And obviously, she's relevant more than a cameo. She's not a cameo.
Listen, all I'm saying is better that Mutt was her kid and not Willie, because my God, if she.
That's the deep lore is if Willie was his mom, then he would have been out there going, just do it. You know what I mean? Is that a joke?
That's cringe, is what it is.
You want to laugh?
Listen, all I'm saying is Shia LaBeouf. I've never really watched too many movies. I mean, Transformers and this are probably the only two things I've seen him in.
I've done.
Are probably the only things I've seen him in. And
Yeah.
the only other remotely like famous thing I know him for is the "Just do it."
What have you seen the Shia LaBeouf, like the musical performance?
No.
Like brandishing a knife, it's Shia LaBeouf.
Nope.
Something I don't know. He's trying.
All I'm saying is I don't know how he's perceived, so I don't know much about this guy other than the few things I just said. I know that he's kind of not looked upon as great anymore.
I think while people may have simmered down on the fact that he was probably going through a rough place, you know what I mean? Like, it's not something like maybe he's a terrible person. My view is maybe he's not a terrible person, went through a hard time, and now he's just kind of outcasted from it. He's like, that would be a PR disaster.
Yeah.
Because he was going to be in a movie. Do you remember that movie? It had a lot of drama around it anyway. It came out like last year. It's called Don't Worry, Darling. It had, do you know Florence Pugh?
Sounds familiar.
She was in Midsummer,
Yeah.
and she
Okay.
was she was the Yelena, she was Black Widow's like sister, and
Yeah.
Okay, well, there was her, and then it ended up being Harry Styles, where it was like, I want to say like a romantic thriller type thing. I don't really know what the movie's about, but there was like a lot of drama where Chris Pine, the guy from Dungeons and Dragons, like the main guy, the dad.
He was so good in that
Well,
movie.
he was in that movie too, and when they were doing their press tour, there was like so much drama that Harry Styles was with the director, Olivia Wilde, and like basically all this drama was coming out about how like people were leaking receipts that she was talking about how Florence Pugh was being a little, high and mighty queen, and then basically she was like, we had to go and get rid of Shia LaBeouf because she wouldn't want to work with him. And then Shia LaBeouf was like, no, you just like, I told you I quit. Like, had nothing to do with that. So he was going to be in that movie that came out last year. And then he refused it or something.
Sounds like a whole lot of drama.
All of that to say that he was going to be in a movie.
Yeah, in a movie. Yeah,
Yes.
I got you.
So I don't know if he's just inactive as an actor now, an actor.
All I know is I don't know much about the man, but I thought that his role in here and the way he did in this movie was fine. I thought he was good.
Yeah, I mean,
I thought he was great.
This was peak Shia LaBeouf.
That's what I was saying. Like, I think in this movie he was great.
Yeah, because I want to say this movie came out in 2008. This was like, he did Transformers,
And then
Indy,
this, yeah.
Transformers 2.
Gotcha.
2007, 2008, 2009. He
yeah.
was fucking living.
Yeah, I was
he
gonna
made
say.
so much money, he had to have.
No matter how anyone looks at him now, because like I said, I don't know much about him, but I do think in this movie he did really good at what he was doing.
Yeah.
And I really liked his character, honestly. I mean, him being that edgy teenager, like, look at my cool knife, I'm edgy. And then I like the back and forth between him and Indiana. And
Yeah.
it was fun.
Gramps to dad.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
finding out that his son was so good. That whole time he's like, I quit school. He's like, it's fine. He's like,
That's probably got to be one of my favorite turn tails of any movie.
That is pretty good. He's just
And
like,
it's such a long setup. Like,
yeah, because it's like a whole hour later.
yeah, it's a good bit of the movie later, and like I think I think one thing that Indiana Jones as a franchise has always been great with is comedic timing, or at least set up for a plot point. Earlier on in one of the first movie, you didn't like it, but he grabs it, right? He grabs the medallion
Yeah.
for the staff,
Yeah.
burns his hand.
And then they
Later
were
on,
off
they're like,
because of...
How'd they figure it out?
That was a
And
cool
then-
concept. Yeah, that was
like
a cool
stuff like
concept.
that. There's been like serious moments like that. Indy 2, if I really want to think about the movie right now, I'm sure I could think of something. And then this one, you've got like a comedic setup, a joke setup like 45 minutes beforehand. Love it. I love that.
It's like, he's your son. Wait. He's like, why didn't you keep him in school?
I love that that's his first thought. And then the snake, like, I think this movie...
The snake was pretty good, too. Like,
Yeah.
throwing a snake. He's like, just find something else.
Call it a rope.
Call it a rope. Yeah.
Grab the rope. Yes, no. I love it. And then, I'm trying to think. So, what other supporting characters can we really talk? We've got Kate Blanchett as like Vanko or whatever. I don't remember her name.
Oh, the villain?
Yeah, not Olga.
Yeah, you called her Olga, and you're like,
I straight
fun
up,
fact, not Olga.
I started the movie. I was like, yeah, I'm pretty sure her name's Olga, but they only call her by her last name. And then it was not that. Irina.
Yeah,
Irina.
that
yeah.
sounds right.
Yes. So Irina and I don't know how I feel about this character.
She was okay.
She was
I think she
fine.
was better than the cult leader.
Oh yeah.
As far as like a
Yeah.
villain. Like the cult, I like better than Russians here. It's just like the presence and like the cult vibe is always a fun
So
thing.
you like the cult?
I just like that
movie.
aesthetic
That's
more.
your favorite.
Yeah, I like that aesthetic more than like your
antagonistic
Russians
group.
versus Nazi. I know probably everyone likes the Nazis over like the rest of the things we fought,
That is like the classic,
but
but
I don't know. I've always liked the aesthetic of like fighting cults that are whack or crazy or whatever. So that's always fun for me. So that
Right.
was something, and you see that in like horror movies and stuff all the time. So that's something that's familiar to me.
Yeah.
And something that like I've dabbled in with other movies that I've watched and I'm into. So I'm like, okay, I can see resemblance of something I like already, and
Right.
then we put it into this setting, and it was fun. Like I said, the cult leader itself was a bad villain.
yeah,
But-
Molaram.
Yeah.
Or
I think-
Molaram.
I
couldn't
think-
remember it in the last.
I think
podcast,
her
so-
in this movie is a better villain overall versus the cult leader for sure, 100%.
Yes.
That's where I stand here.
And I think that's another issue I actually have with this movie. Are you familiar with the idea that, and I'm going to use this as a more of a pop culture reference, but I think it ties in well with this. So Star Wars: A New Hope,
Yeah.
Star Wars: The Force Awakens.
Okay.
I know you're not a Star Wars person. I understand that.
Okay.
But I'm sure you were aware of the criticism that The Force Awakens, when it came out, everyone was just like, it's just A New Hope. Like, they remade A New Hope, basically, with a continuation plot. Basically, like saying, oh, all that stuff happened, these are new characters, and then they basically gave them very similar
Like the exact
character
same
arcs.
kind of plot. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like, orphan girl on a desert planet, orphan boy on a desert planet, finds out they have Force abilities, and they go and join the Resistance.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
And they blow up the giant, planet destroying object naturally. So that happens. In this movie, I couldn't help but notice. I really couldn't help but notice. No, I couldn't help but notice that the Russians in this were just the Nazis from the first movie.
Yeah.
They're going around finding religious or otherworldly artifacts that have some military potential. Mm-hmm. What was the first movie? Except in the first movie, they weren't just like, oh yeah, no, they're like Hitler he has a want for the occult. Great. So I don't know. That was something that was glaring to me. It's just like, it's a very similar plot. The difference to me is the villain was much more involved from the beginning.
Yeah.
As
Like
opposed
right from
to-
the get-go, she was already there.
Whereas in the first movie, they make it like, yeah, the Nazis are the driving force, but Belloc is kind of like
Yeah, you
the
didn't
true
see.
antagonist.
That's the guy with the hat,
The
right?
hat,
the
no.
one that like they. Yeah,
Yeah.
you meet him like at the first time you meet him is just him just sitting at the table, and like Indiana Jones comes in and sits with him.
Well, you do meet him in the beginning.
I
He has
mean,
the tribe
yeah,
people.
but like
Yeah,
before
yeah.
you know,
Yes,
he
yes, yes,
like
yes,
is the
yes.
main villain, right?
Yes.
So like you see
find out
him
he's in league
later.
with the
You don't
Nazis.
even see the cult leader remotely until like
Halfway through.
yeah, and then
and you see
her
it-
in this movie was like right from the get go. She like walks out and like yo. So
Mm-hmm.
I do like that she was there from the get go and you knew who the main villain was from the beginning.
Yes.
I like that.
I like that a lot. I like that. I thought that the secondary antagonist, I don't even pretend to know his name, but the kind of Russian officer, the one that was always fighting Indy, the one that got eaten by the ants.
Oh,
They went on the train ride together, and then
yeah.
like I like that he was always going through the same thing that Indy was, in the sense that whenever there was hardship, they were fighting. They were always neck and neck. I love that because I always felt like he was the brute force.
Yeah.
And I thought that was really cool. Not that he was scary, but when they're beating the shit out of each other, I'm like, oh wow, there's a push and pull here. And there wasn't every fight, because in the beginning he's hanging him with chains.
Yeah, the fact that he didn't even like Indiana didn't even like kill him or like fight him to the death after like the rocket ride.
Oh,
He just kind of like
I'd
walked
have taken a
off.
pillow. And,
Well, he was
Yeah.
up. He was dizzy, but he was up.
I know.
They were both like, oh,
But I think individual villains, I thought it was great. I thought the reasoning and the setup could have been a lot better,
yeah,
personally.
even as a person who's not like super into the series and stuff, the thing I did notice that the second movie didn't do, I don't know about the third since I never watched it, but from the first and this one,
Do you think we'll ever go back and watch it?
I don't know. But I will say that the thing that I did kind of like and was cool to nod back to was the first one had like the traveling with the maps and stuff and like the plane
Yes.
or whatever. They did
They
that
all
in
do
this
that.
movie.
Yeah, they all
The
do.
second one didn't.
They did.
I don't remember the second one doing that.
They only traveled the one time. With the plane.
Okay. Well, this one did it like twice or three times, and I don't remember the second one having that. I must have not been paying attention at that time, though.
It was very like quick, because it just showed the one plane ride, and then obviously they woke up and then crashed.
Yeah, crashed.
So,
Yeah. I didn't know that there was a transition like that.
Yeah,
for the
yeah.
plane in the second one. Okay. Well, then never mind, I guess. But I thought it was just like a nod back to the first one, which is like, oh, hey, remember when we did this?
Right.
But since
Now-
they brought the girl back, I always forget her name.
Marion.
Yes, Mary.
Yes, as I kind of told you, Sala, the guy from the first movie,
Yeah.
the friend with all the kids, he comes back in the third movie.
Yeah,
Yeah,
the one that like is friends with Indiana Jones or
Yes,
whatever. Yeah.
he's back in the third movie, and I'm fairly certain he and the original Dean from the first movie, the one that had the statue in this movie because he had died,
Yeah.
those were the only two returning characters for number 3.
3.
So we actually had returning characters as opposed to
Second
the
one
second
where
movie,
it didn't
which
have
didn't.
anyone.
And then there was also the introduction of Sean Connery as Indy's father.
Yeah.
So
And
that
then wasn't in this movie at all. The father.
yeah, no, he's
Yeah, I said-
he's in universe he's dead. He's passed away as well.
Okay.
Pretty much the only like reference to him was at the end when Mutt was like, "Oh, well, what about you, Daddy-O?" And then, why did you stay around? And then Indy's like, "Well, somewhere up there, your grandpa is laughing right now."
Yeah,
that was it.
yeah.
But that was about the most of a callback we got to number 3 for the most part. But from what I understand, I think Salah's going to be back in number 5, along with Indy.
But they not, like I said, they're not going to have the Mutt because him not.
I don't know if they'll explain him off. Like, hey, he's off doing he started a family or something. You know, I don't know. And I don't know about Marion. I don't know anything. I'm pretty sure in the trailer they showed Salah.
Interesting.
But I haven't watched it in a long time.
I don't know. It's just weird not to bring those two characters back since they were such a huge point of 4, and then it seems like it was wrapping a story with all of them being like a family. So it's kind of weird that to not bring them back. I don't know. That's just my opinion, and maybe that's why it's getting bad reviews.
I actually, outside of the fact that I've heard some negative sentiment, I don't know what's being said.
Yeah, I never read it. I just know that it was getting like 5s and stuff.
Because I didn't want to, cloud the headspace beforehand.
Yeah,
if we have, if I have points, I'll say them. You know what I mean, one way or the other. But I think while we're on the topic of 5, and I do want to continue our critique of Crystal Skull as we go, but one thing I want to talk about was actually, and this comes with bringing these old characters back, the idea that this was meant to be the end.
Yeah.
And 3, I don't remember that being so crystal clear that 3 was the end of a trilogy, because it's not really a trilogy. They're kind of standalone films, like standalone issues, I guess. But the fact that 3 was like, oh, it's the return of not the return of the Nazis, but like
Return of the Nazi. That's the title.
it's like Nazi zombies.
They just come back as zombies.
Yeah, but no,
It's the same Nazis from the first one.
Right.
The treasure didn't, like when they burned or whatever, they took their souls and then they come back as like.
would have been a cool thought.
That would have been a cool thought. I would have been down for that.
Right. But with 3 being, I think, the movie we get the most Indy backstory, I will say that.
It's 3.
There is actually flashbacks of Indiana as a young boy or a younger kid when he first gets the whip.
Honestly, I feel like that stuff, as for his character, is probably important. I feel like as far as the plot goes, it doesn't really matter. Because I feel like when I watch Indiana Jones, I don't really care. I'm just kind of going in for the exploration and the journey and what this treasure's about and how it's going to end. I don't really...
Right. No, I completely agree. We get, like I said, I think 3, we get the most of a backstory. He gets the whip from a circus, like a lion tamer's.
Oh, okay.
That's the original whip. I don't know if it's the same whip he uses. We find out that he calls himself Indiana after the family dog. That was like a something that at the end of the movie he keeps calling him Henry. Of course, that's where we learn his name's Henry, and then
that's what they called Mutt, right? Isn't that his real name?
Well, yeah, his name's Henry as well, but the whole time Oxley is like Henry Jr. You know, that's
because in this movie when they're like in the mud trap, he's like, "What'd you name him?" Or like, yeah, because he calls him Mutt or whatever, and she's like, "That's not his real name."
He's like, good name.
Yeah, good name.
Yeah, but
doesn't even catch on. He's like, "Good name, cool."
Yeah, he's just focusing on, and then he's like, "Why didn't you make him finish school?" No, this movie, I really enjoy it. I do. I think that there's definitely criticism, and I've already said some, but is there any main points that you'd like to speak about, whether it be criticism or positives, honestly?
Honestly, criticisms for this movie, I mean, it suffers just like every other one of them that I've had, except 2. 2 was a little less of this, but again, it's just not my type of movie, right? So, there's a lot of times where I'm just like, okay, I'm kind of bored. There's not like a whole lot happening. There was times in this movie where I was just sitting there and it even got me yawning. I'm like it's a little slow pace. It's like there's certain sequences that go real fast, like the fight scenes and like all the, especially like when you get to the end with the final confrontation with like all the aliens and stuff and all that stuff is fine, fast paced, good to go. But there's just certain scenes where you're just sitting there like, okay, yep, still not much going on.
Right.
So that's something that I feel like this franchise suffers. But again, that could just be my lack of being in action movie genre
I'm
vibes,
glad.
or if that's something you as well notice.
I'm glad you mentioned that because that leaves us with two kind of branching off points to talk about. One of which being the actual pacing of the film itself. And in the first movie, we kind of dissected how we would cut it down.
Yeah, with the submarine.
Like the submarine
scene
section just
didn't
like
need to be.
it was unnecessary.
Yeah.
In this movie, there's a similar situation that happens, but I think it is a lot more relevant to the story. They escape from the camp, only to be captured
Again
in the pit.
Yeah, in the pit. And then
That time, it actually resulted in new information. We had just learned that Marion was Mutt's mom.
Yeah.
In the scene following, where they escape, we find out.
I mean, I know it has to be, set in stone, but like I kind of already guessed that when when you're watching it.
Right. Naturally.
I was gonna say, I was like, okay, obviously it's gonna be his son,
right?
But like, it has to be set in stone, obviously, in the film universe. So like, they have to do that,
right?
Which, honestly, as filler as that scene kind of is, I think that scene's great.
I was gonna argue that scene was an example of doing it right.
Right. Yeah.
But
that scene was fun, anyways. Like, I just like the back and forth because that's the first time he like sees her in 21 years. So like, you see them bickering and stuff already,
right?
And then they run into the trap, and then the whole snake thing, like that whole sequence is funny and fun, and that's the stuff I like of the movies. But
and where I think I found the movie actually dragging was once again as we get into kind of, it's so hard to say because there's the tomb in Peru when they first get there. I remember feeling, and when they're going through a cell, I don't think they needed the cell, or maybe the cell isn't in Peru. I don't remember. The cell is what leads them to Peru. Anyway, I thought they could have just found it in a notebook. And I really do. I think they should have just like, hey, Indy, let's kind of double check the notebook here. What kind of clues we got? They already mentioned Peru, and they mentioned all the locations they go to throughout the course of this movie.
Yeah.
And when they're sitting in the diner, like getting the milkshakes in the beginning, I don't think they're here for the milkshakes, kid. I thought you brought a knife to a gunfight,
Yeah. Oh.
Anyway.
Yeah, he's just like, knife. He's like, what do you want? And then he's like, yeah, you brought a knife to a gun, before he even says gunfight. They're like, whoosh.
Yeah, so he's like, yeah, you're going into the lost, the jungle, find the city of gold or whatever. I almost died of typhus myself. He mentioned everything.
Yeah.
And I don't like that the journey was expected.
Yeah, like it was kind of outlined for us, like what's to come, like what's going to happen in the film. Is that what you're trying to say?
Yes, it is. And then with that, it's like, I know they had to go to Peru to get the skull because Oxley put it back, right?
Yeah.
But I think this could have been a thing where skip the jail scene. I thought that was, I don't know. I don't know how to explain it exactly. It felt a little unnecessary as far as like the overall pacing of the movie. It slowed it down because you had the tomb and then you had the cell back to back, basically.
Yeah.
And I think one of those would have worked.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, Peru, the whole talking, you don't go to school or you didn't fix bikes. And then they go into the tomb and they have like the actual cool action scene with the little freaking freakies. And then they go, poof, and then, wow. And
that was cool.
That was cool. Like, great. That was well paced, well and good. I thought the prison just didn't need to be there.
Yeah, I agree.
And I think if there was a part of this movie, even if it was for the sake of just a few minutes, I think that's where I would have cut it, and maybe we would have gotten it under the 2-hour mark.
Yeah, I was gonna say they always hit the 2 hour or a little bit above 2 hour, and I feel like these movies are a little too long. I think if they were shortened by like 10 to 15, 20 minutes, whatever, however you could do it, if you could work it with 10 to 20 minutes less, I think the pacing would be a lot better.
Right.
Because like the pacing's not terrible by any means, but there's like certain scenes that'll happen, and you'll be like, cool, and like all this action-packed, fast-paced stuff's happening. And then you go right to a super slow scene that takes like 10, 20 minutes, and you're like, okay.
Well, I think that is actually where there is a bit of an acquired taste with Indiana Jones compared to, say, like an action, like I say an action movie, like an action 80s hero movie.
Yeah.
Those are hour-and-a-half movies, right?
Mm-hmm.
Hour 20, whatever. They're not very long. They go in there, they get the job done, and that's it, right? They get blown up, blown around, doing all these different things.
I think this movie has more like, it wants to tell like the universe,
like
and it wants to like talk about the characters.
It's got Pinky Up when it's telling the story.
What?
pinkies up, like it's fancy.
I guess.
Yeah, and like it's like
I was.
I'm not saying it should be,
I know what you mean,
but like it takes its time. It
I don't
sets
know.
up these things.
Yeah, I was gonna say it sets up stuff, but it also wants to expand and talk about the characters within the universe, even the side characters, which usually half the time they don't matter. So I feel like like the last movie that we watched, the second one, we didn't have to talk about Willie. We really didn't have to spend a lot of time on her, but they did have some scenes that were focused on her and stuff, and it's like we don't need this.
Right.
And I think
I
that's
think she
something.
should have tripped getting onto the plane and not
Died.
made it.
Just died.
Okay, now
Yeah, same thing you just said.
you're talking about Willie Scott right now.
I don't care. Anyway, I think that's something that, but again, like you were saying, it's kind of like an acquired taste. Some people like it. Some people may see that as a negative. I don't see it as like a terrible negative, but as for me, I seen myself getting bored with it sometimes. And that's just something that I've seen with all the movies. Is like there's certain times where I'm just sitting there halfway through the movie or something, or a certain scene where I'm like, let's go, let's do something cool.
Right.
But that's just me.
And like, and I fully like looking at this movie pretty much for the first time with a critical lens. I haven't seen this movie probably in 5+ years. Like legitimately, it's been a long time since I've seen this one. Indy 1 I'd seen more recently, but the rest of them I hadn't seen in a while. And looking at this one more critically, I was like, pacing was something that I was noticing. Like I was like, okay, I know stuff is coming. Like I remember I was like, okay, stuff's coming up, but like
Yeah, because we were up there just like,
taking our time.
because we were just up there just like, yep, it's getting pretty slow again. You're like, just wait, there's stuff coming.
And once it hit on,
Yeah,
I would say the last like, what, 2/5, like I don't want to say a third per se, more than a third, but less than half. That last bit, was that not like?
Yeah, it was fun.
That was there.
I was gonna say a lot of stuff
Yes.
was going on. It was definitely quicker.
And then like there's shining bits throughout all of the movie.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely worth watching. I mean,
I agree.
definitely worth giving it a shot and seeing if you like the movie. I mean, even as me who isn't super into these movies, I thought it was fun at least, and I think I do enjoy this more than the original. I think the original is still my lowest rating one that I'm thinking of.
Really?
Because I feel like the first one suffered more from the boring bits compared to 2 and 3. I feel like I was more interested in both. And I'm sure a lot of people don't like this movie for that reason, but I kind of thought it was cool we did something different with the aliens. I'm not going to lie. Like I said, that's probably a super unpopular opinion, but I kind of dig the whole
I like the
different.
I like the setup and the idea. I wish we
Road
never
movie.
saw it.
Yeah, I agree.
I wish we
think that
never
would've been
saw
cool.
the saucer.
Yeah, the saucer. Yeah, I would have been totally cool with that.
I wish like when they show the skeletons like move.
Mhm.
I wish that was the most it was.
And they just,
then
like,
I wish they
disappeared.
like, yeah, if they disappeared, I don't care if they exploded.
Yeah.
I don't care what they would have done. I just wish that whole thing.
Well, honestly, they like all formed together, made like the physical alien.
That was
and then,
cool.
And then it was doing like the thing on her, like getting her the information.
That
Then
was
she like whatever. So after that happens, he should have just been like teleport, and then that should have
Right.
been it. And then the whole thing's just collapsing, right? So
Right.
I think it should have just ended with that instead of showing the saucer and all that. But I agree there. I don't think the saucer was really necessary, but I did like the twist and turn. That's something this franchise has done for me. Is like each movie, I have no idea what to expect
Like
for
for
the
the
end goal.
final.
The end goal, like
Yes.
like going into this not knowing anything with the first movie, I didn't even know there was even remotely supernatural stuff involved.
Right.
So like the end of the first movie, I'm like, hold up, wait a minute. And then the second movie, I'm like, okay, so something supernatural is going to happen. But then we have all this cult stuff, and I'm like, okay, interesting.
Yeah.
And then this one is just like aliens. Like,
Yes.
what?
Yeah.
So that's something I can say about this franchise. It definitely keeps you on your toes for the end goal anyway. So, and there's not really too many hints towards like what the end goal is going to be, right? Unless there might be some, but as a first time watch, I don't really see. Like I didn't really see. I mean, the head. All right, in this movie, for example,
Okay.
the head. You see like the long, like back of the head, looking like the alien from
The xenomorph,
xenomorph, yeah, from Aliens. But with that in mind, I was like, his head looking like some alien figure. But like at the end of the day, I was just like, maybe it's just a relic or something. Like I don't know. Like I didn't expect it to actually involve real aliens.
Well, I don't know. Indy 1, they tell it pretty quick that they're looking at the depiction of the Ark in the book when the two agents come and meet him at the school for the first time.
Yeah.
Before they're like, hey, you need to go here and get it.
Yeah, and you get it. Yeah.
He is talking like, and they're like, "Wow, what's that yellow coming out of there?" He goes, "Power of God." lightning, whatever. Little does he know that's actually the souls coming out. And
okay.
Yeah. There are
subtle things,
bits,
but it's not like in your face.
He doesn't believe it.
Yeah.
He's it's just like it's like, oh, it's a religious scripture.
Well, you think at this point he would believe in these things, because even
Right.
like when they're talking, I forget what they were even saying about it. Like they were talking about like the place, and like Indiana Jones was, I think, talking to Mud or something, and he was like, because he was like, what happens when you do this or that? And he's like, I don't know. It's just a story. I don't remember what the conversation was, but he was
Right.
like denying it and saying it's just a story. And I'm
Yeah.
like, you think after all
You
this
think he'd
time he
believe
would
something,
believe some
right.
of this stuff? Because he's seen some crazy, wacky
Yeah.
stuff. But
I think now.
ooh, speaking of like
got
randomly,
something. He's
just
got something. He's got a
no. This is just back to the point we were talking about with like scenes that might not need to be inputted. I don't remember everything that was really said in the scenario, but after the Nuketown incident where he like survives with the refrigerator or whatever, after that they go with those two dudes who are like flaming on him.
Yeah.
Like, was that part even necessary at all? Where they're like he's getting interrogated? I don't remember what all happens in that scene.
Okay. So
Is that something that didn't need to happen? Because like what I'm thinking of is them being like, you could be a spy too, or whatever, however it was
Yeah,
going, and I'm
so-
like, that part to me didn't seem necessary.
Didn't seem relevant.
But I don't know what happens after they interrogate.
I think the two things that scene sets up is it puts Indy in the know of who the enemy is, who the girl is, and maybe what the motivations are, which I've already determined.
okay,
I
I
didn't
did.
like the motivations.
Yeah, I
But
did
then
talk
also,
about
I
her.
think subtly, well, or not so subtly, as we go into the campus thereafter, another college movie for us.
It's always college
Always a
movies.
college campus. It kind of sets up just how deep in the Red Scare is. Like
Mm-hmm.
the idea, like it's the Cold War. We're afraid of the Russians.
Are these the guys that interrogated them and stuff? Are these the like group that like fires him from his like college job?
I think it's implied that the government did.
Because they fired the
The-
Indiana Jones and fired the.
Well, they levied, or like they kind of pressured him into getting fired, and then somehow, some way, he leveraged Indy to get some kind of treatment.
money. Yeah.
I don't really know how that works, but whatever. I do like that actor, by the way. The dean.
Yeah, the dean.
I keep wanting to call him Horace, Charlie, but he was in the later Harry Potter
I don't know.
movies.
Did we really like need to know that he got fired though from his job? Because like it didn't really matter.
I mean, he didn't really say much. He was just like
Cool.
all it was just basically Indy getting fired, and then he's like, "Oh yeah, what have you been through?" And he's like, "I resigned," and then the scene cuts
Yeah,
away.
so
I
it's
don't
cut
think
to-
it spent time on
Yeah.
it. I don't think it's an issue.
I mean, we can move on from this. I was just thinking of that scene, then I'm thinking of this scene. I was just thinking of some of the scenes we could give examples for as to like what could be cut maybe. And those are the two scenes that were in my mind that I'm like, they're like barely in, like I can barely vividly remember what happens in these scenes, but I remember them not being super important, or at least they were kind of boring. And I was like, yeah, I don't really care. So like these are the two scenes I vividly remember being like, whatever. So,
That's fair. I stand by the jail scene. I think that's me.
yeah.
If I were to thumb pick one out, that's the one. But going off of that, we've got the boring scenes, but then of course we've got the action scenes.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the set pieces of this movie.
Okay. I know I didn't really care too much about the car one in the original, but I did like this one. I like the jungle, because like the first one was just them on an empty road, him being like, I'm going from car to car. This one was more like the car. He stays in that car.
Yeah.
And most of the time it was like Mutt who was fighting basically, because Indiana Jones was
I
driving.
like that everyone was involved.
But everyone was
I mean,
fighting.
Spalko was getting pushed around. She was flying off and like holding the turret,
Yeah,
trying to shoot
I like
Marion.
that because
Marion
like
was driving.
she like peeks up and then she just goes.
Yes, it
Like
was great.
Yeah, I definitely like that set. I think in the first film, my favorite set piece and like fight was the plane.
The plane was
Or,
good.
yeah, that
Yes.
part was great.
Classic.
And then in this one, I think that's my favorite fight scene.
You think that's your favorite?
That jungle one, and it lasted a pretty decent. And then that's when like a decent time. And that's when like Mutt gets like yoinked up into like the monkeys, and then that ends up leading into the ant scene.
Yeah.
So like those two scenes back to back were really good. I actually really like those action set
Yeah.
pieces.
Yes. No. The ants. I always thought those were disturbing. I thought
Oh, yeah.
that was gross.
Gross.
I thought that did a really good job. I thought that was probably as grounded in reality as you possibly could be, because I feel like trying to think of a good example. Like Uncharted, there's a scene very similar to that, but it's spiders.
Spiders.
Spiders, in my opinion, I don't think would do that, but ants would act as a colony like that.
Yeah, like
ants
work
would
together because
communicate.
that's how they're.
Right. And
That's their whole thing.
And I think Indy just does it better here. I really do. I think ants are terrifying, even though they don't need, like, they inherently aren't. But like I think
As like a colony though, they are
Oh my
like
God,
all of
yes.
them all over you. Yeah.
oh my god,
You see
yes.
one ant, you're like whatever, but like a colony of them, oh
Hell,
god.
you saw how big those ants were. Even
Yeah, they
one of
were-
them would kind of creep me out a little.
Yeah, they were
Get
huge.
a 12 gauge, shoot myself. Not even the ant, just me. I don't want to live in a world where I know those exist.
For real. Yeah, there were some good set pieces in this movie. I mean,
And then we've also got just fight scenes in general. I like the physical comedy of him
Yeah.
doing the whip in the beginning, missing showing his age a little bit, missing the first swing and falling back on the other car.
Mm-hmm.
Like I thought that was funny, and then like you've got the whole like the pew and then Nuketown, just that whole little bit was really
the
cool.
Nuketown part was cool, but I was just kind of like, what's going on here? I'm like,
Yeah.
But it
I
was just
mean-
like a test for a nuclear thing.
Yes,
Like it made sense, but at the same time, I'm like,
if you
what?
I think that was a defining part. Weirdly enough, I thought that was a defining part of the tone of this movie, so it feels relevant. But if you honestly talk about cutting a scene,
That would be one.
that would be one.
Because
Just have him
doesn't-
get picked up in the desert by the
Yeah,
the
I was gonna say because
FBI.
doesn't that cut like right after he gets away from like that ship scene, like when the ship like
yeah,
blasts
he
them
runs
both
off
and
and
he
then
runs off and then
comes
he
off
goes,
to the small town.
Yeah,
the Atomic Cafe town or whatever.
yeah, the
And
Atomic
that's
Cafe.
yeah, that's what it is. So if you really wanted to cut an entire scene, that would be it.
yeah.
Because then you could just have, oh no, we were attacked and our guards were killed. Well, what would you do? The FBI would be out there combing the whole place in case somebody didn't get away.
Yeah.
That's where I would go. That's what if I were to do something, that's what I'd do. Take out the prison cell scene. I'd probably save the movie 5-10 minutes.
I think that's something it needs to. I just feel like it's a little too long.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think all in all, though, this movie was definitely pretty fun. I think that the characters, Indiana Jones was still really good. I think he was a lot more grounded than the second one. The second one, he was a little goofy, which I liked. But I think this one, he's a pretty good mixture of the first and the second movie. I think he is a pretty good mixture of both. And, yeah, it wasn't overly goofy, but he wasn't overly boringly serious either. And
No,
then-
I think it was a nice balance.
yeah, I think it was a nice balance. Even though I preferred the goofier side, I'm cool with the balance. I think that was good on both sides. And I also think that, again, the girl character,
Marion.
I don't know, I can't remember her name, but
Then
she
Mutt calls her
definitely,
Mary.
she definitely was a downgrade as compared to the first one. She wasn't a bad character, but like compared to her first entrance and like the way she was in the first movie, like I feel like the first movie she was actually really cool and like she over exaggerated a lot of stuff, and I like that. And this
Yeah.
one, she was a little less of both of those. And then with Mutt, he was a good new introducing character. I thought he was a lot better than most of the new introducing characters from the previous films.
I think where Mutt got the role, got the spotlight and the shine. I think that's where Marion and even Oxley, especially Oxley, as a character we've never met before.
Yeah, him is like an irrelevant
those
character
fall
to me.
away.
Yeah, because
Yes.
it's really focused on Mutt and Indiana.
Yes,
yeah.
that's where a lot of that is, and
But-
even Mutt's full potential, I don't think is even reached in this movie.
Yeah.
So the tragedy of Shia LaBeouf's career and the Indy franchise being we never will probably ever
See
get to
him
see,
again.
and an extension of that character,
Mm-hmm.
more than maybe a line saying, "Oh yeah, he's off doing his own thing now." Maybe, that might be what we get. So, yeah, I don't know. I'm very baffled by a lot of this movie in a way. So, I don't know. Oh, before we get into our final verdicts, I have one more thing.
Lay it all on me.
One more thing. I noticed you stopped count about halfway through the movie, but
I did stop count.
the soundtrack.
We count every time it plays the Indiana Jones theme
Yeah,
because
the-
the first movie was outrageously huge. There was probably like 60. I'm just putting a random number out there, 60.
We didn't count for the first movie,
Yeah, we did.
but we made and I was like, yeah, that's kind of crazy. There was probably like 3 themes throughout the course of that movie, or 3 songs, and they just iterated on the main theme the whole time. I was like, great.
I will say that in this movie, there is obviously way more different things being used. But even though they did use the theme
They got
a
that
little
Elvis
bit,
in there.
even though they did,
You ain't a mother, no.
even though they do use the Indiana Jones theme quite a bit, I do think that they changed the way it like works. Like they changed the tone, the theme, like the way it's like introduced into the scene. It's different.
Yeah.
Like I don't know how to explain it other than that. Like it's not the exact same. Like the first one was just
tone of
copy
it.
pasting the exact same sound. It's changed a little bit in each scene that it's used. Really,
I agree. The tone of it is definitely varying. It's definitely used in quite a few different ways, and I like that it feels like a nostalgia thing.
yeah.
While it also, well, no, okay, I'm not saying like, oh,
It's
they use the theme,
nostalgic
it's
for.
nostalgia.
Oh, it's really nostalgic. Even like not for me because I don't know. I felt it a little bit because like I could just feel the fans. Like there hasn't been a movie for what 10, 15 years.
Yeah.
And then the first time you see like the outline, the hat, him pick it up, and it
silhouette's
plays
so
it.
nice.
Like I know that like Indiana Jones fans were like they were seething like yes.
In a world where nowadays we have a comic book hero cameo of crazy proportions, I thought this movie as I don't want to say a reboot, but a callback film.
Yeah.
I thought this movie handled nostalgia and cash-ins like that quite well.
Yeah.
It was very tasteful. There's obviously the clear connection between Marion and Indy from the first film. That's obviously pretty central to the subplot of the film. But then there's talking about, of course every human has a father, but he's like, somewhere out there, your grandpa, and of course we know that character. Or, well, you don't, but we should know that character.
Yeah, you should at this point in time.
And, here and there, Indy's talking about his previous adventures to some degree, and that's really all you need to do. I mean, it sets up that he's lived a good life, or at least a crazy life, and then now he's just feeling the age, and now he's got to settle down at the end.
Yep.
So, and then it bookends the entire adventures.
It looks like everything's done, wrapped up, and then here we are. Call it a cash grab or not, we're in for another movie, so I guess we'll see how it goes.
They have been, exclusively marketing this as his last adventure. So he's like John Wick. He's like, they keep calling me back in.
Yeah.
I'm thinking I'm back. Yeah. So yeah, I'm thinking I'm back. But anyway, with that being said, final verdicts.
I'll let you go first.
You want me to go first?
I went first last time.
That's fair. So Indiana Jones, Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. I think this movie's too long. I think that's why pacing can suffer. I would eliminate the prison scene. I would eliminate, unfortunately, Nuketown, if there was something to be put on the cutting room floor.
I agree.
I just feel like they put so much into something, they're like, we got to keep it in now.
That is a cool scene, though.
But it is a cool scene. It's just not something
Needs to be.
relevant.
Yeah.
Yes. I think, in my opinion, where this movie does fall down with the pacing and the length, I think it does make up for in energetic action sequences and probably the best comedy of the series.
Mm-hmm.
That's my child, by the way. I'm not going to edit this out because it's just been going on for too long. I don't know what to say. She's just crazy. Ignore her. We've been sacrificing her all day. It is what it is.
Wait a minute. Wait a second.
Hold up. Wait a minute. I'll get the maids on it. But anyway, what was I saying? Pacing. Yeah. Characters in this movie are hit or miss. I think Indy, Mutt, I like that dynamic. Oxley is a character that gets introduced way too late physically.
I don't think his character was interesting at all.
I agree. I don't think that was an interesting character. I thought Spalko was probably the only redeeming Russian outside of maybe the commander, who I can't remember his name, so he's not that good. Marion did not live up to her potential, but it was cool seeing her back.
Yeah, seeing her come back, yeah.
Yes. So nothing to do with the actress, just more of she didn't have as much to do, but exist. And then, really, outside of that, the main narrative plot points of the movie I thought were okay. I don't really like that it's kind of a carbon copy of the first film as far as motivations for the villains. I do enjoy the setup with the alien, though I'm pretty sure I think it went too far. I think that the appeal of aliens to anyone and everyone out there is that we're never going to get a definitive answer. And this movie gives one, in a way, for some people anyway. And obviously this movie's not real life, but I don't think it needed to toe that line, personally.
Yeah.
So ultimately, I think where I gave the first movie an 8,
Yeah.
I gave the second
7.
movie a 7.
Yep.
I think this movie, in my opinion, I recognize the fault of it, and I recognize that I think there's things I enjoy more than I think a lot of people are going to. I think I'm going to give this movie a 7 as well. I think this movie, for all of its redeemable parts, is just as good as Temple of Doom. I think there's people that are going to agree or disagree, but I think that Temple of Doom was good, and I think Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, nostalgia glasses off for the first time in my life, I think it's actually not that bad. So I think this movie is a 7.
Okay. I mean, honestly, most of my opinions for my final verdict is basically the exact same as yours.
Retweet.
Right down from the alien all the way to the characters and the side characters. Because I think that, like, I don't know. There's something that is with my, like, interest in movies is all about the comedy, right? So the first movie, I rated it I think I rated it a 6.
I think it was a 6, yes.
Yeah.
And then 2 was...
And then 2 was like a 7.5, if I remember correctly. This movie kind of takes both of those two movies. Again, I didn't watch the third one, so I don't know how the third one is. But I will say that this movie felt like a combination of the first and the second. Like they took the goofy, wacky, crazy stuff of the second to the more grounded, serious, boring-ish stuff of the first, I would say for me. They combined those two, and this is what we got.
Okay.
And I don't know if that's what they did with the third, but that's what they did with this one, in my opinion. And I think the tone of this movie was really good. The action sequences were really fun. And I think a thing that helped it, too, is being a movie in the earlier 2000s instead of the 80s.
Okay.
The better, like, CGI, better set pieces and stuff to set up. I feel like there was a lot more of a budget put into this movie, probably, compared to the other ones. I would imagine. Maybe not. But I think that, like, all the set pieces of all these fight scenes were definitely more involved, more stuff was going on versus the other ones that were kind of basic. Although the first one, I will say that I loved the plane fight scene where he's Indiana Jones fist fighting that buff dude, and then they have the plane like slowly turning with the blades.
Yeah.
That scene was great. But other than that scene, the fight scenes in here stood out way more than the previous two that we've watched.
That's fair.
And that's really good. I like that. And the comedy was here, set up. I really like the comedy between the dad, son here, and even bringing the wife back. That stuff was great. Indiana Jones, like, sometimes felt like he was grounded as heck from the first movie. And then other times you got, like, the sinking pit one where it felt like he was just straight from the second movie.
Yes.
So, like, I don't know. I feel like this one is a fan for people I feel like this movie is a good for fans of the first and even the second. Like, if you liked first and second movie, this one's like a perfect movie for you. Because I feel like it's a blend. Although, you might be overturned because of the alien stuff. Maybe you don't really care about that not really paranormal, but like that supernatural stuff compared to what it has been. And I can see that. I think it was interesting to see something different. I thought it was cool, unique. I don't know what the third is, but compared to the first two, this was definitely way different.
The third movie is the Holy Grail.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, that's what it is.
Okay. Well, then I feel like this one is the only movie that really tried to, like, go out of its way and do something completely different as far as, like, the end entity.
Right.
And I don't know.
That's accurate.
I'm kind of with you there. I like the idea of the alien, but I didn't need to see the UFO and the alien, like, peace out, you know?
Right.
I didn't need to see that. I think the presence of it being there and it being linked to this treasure was good enough. I think just keep, and just like you were saying, it's a movie, but it would have been cool to keep the, like, idea that, hey, there's something here, but you don't know what it is for sure. I think keeping that as the idea here would have been way cooler. But it's interesting because this all happened, and then I guarantee in the fifth movie, Indiana Jones ain't ever going to say anything about aliens or be like, aliens are real.
I don't know. I mean, there's, like, in the
Prove me
trailer,
wrong.
he's like, I've seen things you wouldn't believe.
Prove me wrong.
Yeah.
Bring it
So,
up.
we'll see.
But my final verdict, I'm going to probably put it in 7. I think it's
You wanted it
7.
at 7.
I want a 7. The second one, I think overall this movie is better as like a grounded, more serious movie. And I think overall probably more people like this movie than the second movie. But I like the over-the-top stupidity stuff the second one brought me.
See, I think
That's my
just
opinion.
outside looking in, I really, like, I don't think you're understanding that there are people that stand by the original trilogy that just pretend this movie doesn't exist.
Really? I thought this movie was great. I thought that like people in the fan base would like this one over 2 by far.
I knew you would like this one more, and I know I liked it. I mean, whether it be nostalgia or whatever it is, because I grew up with this one as well. Mm-hmm. I knew you'd like this one more because of the kind of movies, or at least the kind of the aspects of those other movies that you went for.
Yeah.
You know, the first movie, I was like, okay, I know he's gonna like 2, and I was, for the most part, I think right.
Yeah, I enjoyed 2.
After, you know, seeing what there was from 2, you know, partially remembering the better parts of this movie only, you know, I was like, okay, yeah, I think this one's a slam dunk as well. And I'll be genuine. I thought for you, I thought you would enjoy this one more.
I think,
but I guess my brain doesn't remember the slower parts. And
yeah,
I recognize
I feel
that
like
takes
the
it
second
down.
one didn't have as many of those slower parts, and just the moments where it was funny in this one, it wasn't over the top funnily. Like the second one was super over dramatic and funny and wacky, and I was just always questioning what was going on, and I was laughing. Like, you could say that as a bad thing, but for me, it's entertaining.
That's fair.
And something, especially going from the first one where I was bored, going into that to the second one, doing a completely
Right.
tone shift, I was like, whoa. So I was like, I'm liking the second one. And then this one kind of took both of those movie parts and made it into this movie. I feel like if I was a normal person
Yes.
and actually cared about like story stuff in this franchise and
Yeah.
this was my genre, I would probably say this is probably the best rounded movie out of all of them.
Okay.
But again, you apparently say that's an unpopular opinion, but that's where I stand. 7.
From what I can tell from online sentiment, I haven't went out of my way to look at reviews for it either. If I'm being honest, I just haven't.
Mm-hmm.
But from, you know, if there's a viral tweet about the movie, I look at the comments.
Yeah.
Or if there's like any,
A popular like tweet or
Anything
something
like-
that
yeah,
comes up. Yeah.
or like if you look at like a trailer for Indy 5, it's like, well, anything's better than Crystal Skull, you know, anything like that.
Interesting.
And like, so
I thought this was a pretty good, well-rounded movie. I thought it was better than the first. You know, I'm probably gonna get lit on fire on a stake, but that's my opinion.
I'm with you on that hill, brother. We're dying together. But I think people just need to have fun, and because I think that's a lot of what indie is.
Yeah, I gotta say, even as me, like I'm not very critical when it comes to movies, so that's why I think for me, movies are really easy to enjoy. Even something like this that's not really up my alley
Nope,
half the
you
time.
really like Nope.
No.
Nope.
See, if it suffers from boredom,
Yeah,
I don't like it,
That's
and that is a movie that was so boring.
Yep. But this has been episode 20, a very big milestone for us. That's 20 weeks in a row.
Yeah, that's
that
crazy.
We have posted a podcast,
I think we missed one.
like week-wise? Or
1 week.
Yeah, but didn't we have a video? We probably didn't record.
No, there was one time where we didn't post anything.
Oh.
It was kind of recent. It was like before we started the Indiana Jones movies. Because that's why we're
But I got
behind
it
one.
out on a Sunday.
I
We
don't
still
know.
had an episode. We had an episode. We had an episode every week.
20 either way. Crazy.
Listen, we post every weekend. I'm going to change that. We don't post on Fridays. We post every weekend. Because I've had too many issues. Too many goddamn issues with YouTube and corruptions and stupid shit that whenever I try to go on Friday and I'm like, yep, great, fun, happy, good times, it never works out for me. So if it's not out on Friday, it's probably out on Saturday. It doesn't matter. But for our next episode, Popcorn episode 21, where we're legally allowed to drink now, we will be watching Indiana Jones 5 and the Dial of Destiny. Now, it will be a little different than this one, as there will be no spoilers.
Yeah.
We won't do a spoilers. It'll be a shorter episode, too, probably about half an hour, 45 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And just depending on how much we have to talk about, I'm sure from the sounds of the reviews we might. And we'll see how it goes, but consider subscribing. Tune in next week. And otherwise, I post other videos. Draven tweets. He's not posting videos. That's for damn sure.
Hey, soon.
I'll believe it when I see it, sir.
Oh, it's soon, buddy. Peace.
Have a good one.